Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are sports broadcaster Henry Winter and the Independent's chief football writer Miguel Delaney. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through some of the back pages tonight. And we're going to start with the eye. Mersey Heat. Jota scores the winner after Tarkowski escapes red card in full-blooded derby. We're going to get into that in a moment. What about the Telegraph? Reds revenge. Jota seals derby win. And once again, the Telegraph flagging up the Tarkowski tackle on Alexis McAllister. Mersey Feet is the back page in The Guardian. Jota is the picture celebrating, restoring the 12-point lead for Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. And in the Mirror, red hot job. Diogo seals derby to send Cop 12 points clear. Well, welcome to our guests, Miguel Delaney and Henry Winter, broadcaster. Let's get straight into the back pages, and we're going to start with the Telegraph. And the main thing that is coming out of this Merseyside derby is the tackle from James Tarkowski on Alexis McAllister. 11 minutes into the game, Sam Barrett, the referee, gave a yellow card. Paul Tierney looked at it, but didn't send the referee to the monitor to have another look. Henry, what's your view of what we saw there tonight?
I think it's a disgrace. We could be talking tonight about Alexis McAllister heading into hospital, let alone Liverpool heading further clear in the title race. I mean, the fact that Paul Tierney, the VAR, will have seen a still photograph like that, will have seen the pictures and from different angles as well, and still didn't think that it was a sensible thing to do, the right thing to do, to actually tell the on-field referee, Sam Barrett, who is young, very promising. He's had a decent season, but he's young, he's inexperienced, and maybe he didn't feel that he wanted to become the story of the Merseyside derby by sending a player off relatively early. But actually, he has become the story, and VAR has become the story, because VAR was brought in to rescue bad mistakes like that. It's a terrible challenge. It's not reckless. It's far worse than reckless. It's serious foul play. All the sort of the four main elements of foul play. It ticks them all: speed, intensity, all of them. So look, we have to be protecting players. It's this stage of the season when players are falling down injured with hamstrings and all sorts of things. We don't want them going off to hospital and being incapacitated for lengthy periods by challenges like that. I mean, even Duncan Ferguson, Everton, liked to tackle. Even he, and in the Sky studio, was saying that's a red.
And even David Moyes as well, after the game in his interview with Sky Sports, suggested that they were perhaps a little bit lucky in that respect for the tackle from Tarkowski. I mean, the view of the referee, I mean, he is in a prime position, you would say, Miguel. And what's your thoughts on why the VAR didn't intervene further?
The only thing I'd say about the referee's position is he's maybe slightly behind it, so the actual contact is maybe slightly obscured from his point of view, although it's still, to be honest, at that speed, it still looks very strong. But I wonder, does the left leg of Tarkowski just mean he can't quite see it in a proper way? As regards why he wasn't sent to VAR, I think it's a bad decision. I think Tarkowski should be gone. The one thing, and I'm not defending the decision, the one thing, maybe playing devil's advocate, I wonder, when I first saw it in slow motion, I thought initially, as he gets the ball, it looks okay. Then it's the follow through where that really should warrant the red. And I wonder, was the VAR conditioned by that initial first touch? It's a very difficult decision to explain, and it was striking. And we were talking about it off air, but it was striking that even the explanation from the Premier League Match Centre, it didn't feel like it made the most sense either.
Yeah, I mean, if the PGML have tried to defend this is what they posted midway through the game. The referee's call of yellow card for a reckless foul by Tarkowski was checked by the VAR with contact on the follow-through after Tarkowski had played the ball, deemed to be reckless. So there's two references to reckless there. I'm guessing they probably couldn't find another word to describe it, because for it
doesn't
to be
much. I mean, like reading that now again, you're kind of thinking, yes, and what's the next sentence? Because even that would almost lead you to think that it should just be a red.
And serious foul play as well. I mean, Henry touched on it, but a tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force. And we went into things like speed, force, intensity and degree of control and the point and the extent of contact on the opponent as well. When you factor in all of those different things, I'm not seeing too many people trying to defend this decision. So does Howard Webb need to come out earlier and quicker on this one and be front-footed, Henry?
Well, absolutely, and PGMO shouldn't put out sort of naive, almost reckless tweets like that. I mean, as Mig said, it was almost laughable. I mean, it was like they thought, well, what are we going to say? They would have actually been better off to have been quiet, and then maybe Sam Barrett come out and talk to the Sky cameras, or Howard Webb comes out, and you don't really want to sort of not ruin but harm a young referee's and a good, promising young referee's career, because we know the pressure that's on referee, that's placed on them by the media, by players, by fans. I get all that, but also we have to protect players. And Alexis McAllister is very fortunate that his foot wasn't quite planted, his leg wasn't quite planted, because that, as Gary Neville was saying in commentary, is a potential leg breaker.
And I assume now that obviously will be an inquest in the PGMOL, Miguel. When they see the back pages tonight and in the morning, do you think there'll be a few red faces at the PGMOL?
You'd think so. Now, I have to say, just picking up on Henry's point there, I actually don't think there should be much blame for Barrett in that situation. I think you would give him leeway just because of where he positioned and the way the tackle went in. But I think it's more a question of why there wasn't a follow-up and why he wasn't sent to the monitor. I think that's where the real questions are in this sense, especially given the whole point, yes, as Henry said. I mean, and given the current climate about the fixture list and the fitness of players, and that can actually lead to more injuries as well, especially in kind of collisions or vigorous tackles. That's where the onus has to be to protect players as well, yeah.
OK, well, let's maybe consider the bigger picture now from the game at Anfield this evening. The bigger picture is that Liverpool, 12 points, they've restored that lead at the top of the Premier League table. Diogo Jota got the goal, which turned out to be the winning goal. We're almost expecting Liverpool to continue their march to the title, but how significant on this night in a derby game is this result for Arne Slot, Henry?
It's incredibly significant. You could see the sort of the emotions that were going through as the sort of the added time sort of marched on. He was just telling his team to sort of control. And when Nunes went through and then had a shot, rather than take the ball down to the corner flag, you could almost hear the whole of the Kop saying, take the ball to the corner flag. They are so close now. I mean, I think if you do the maths and they continue winning and Arsenal continuing, they could do it against Chelsea. So it would be interesting if Chelsea have had some rivalry with Liverpool down the years, give them a guard of honour. So, I think it wasn't a great win, but it was hugely significant for the points and also on the back of their last game, which was a frustrating performance. They looked leggy at Wembley in the Carabao Cup final. They needed to come out and show that they could really deliver. I would imagine that Everton might have some complaint or some concern over the goal in terms of Diaz's position, and Tarkowski almost looked like he assumed Diaz was offside in the build-up to Jota's goal. But yeah, I mean, overall, Liverpool deserved that, and they deserve it for this season, even though they're looking a little bit fatigued and tired, and probably could do with it. Well, not necessarily a deeper squad, but maybe a little bit more judicious rotation by the manager. He seems to be going to the well again and again with the same bunch of players. But yeah, it's an absolute huge win. And
do you think, Miguel, that Everton do have a little bit of frustration, I suppose, with the Liverpool winning goal? I think David Moyes thought they were a little bit unlucky to take that goal, Liverpool.
I can understand the frustration. I still think, and really maybe the frustration from my own perspective with the kind of the nuances and almost convolutions to the modern offside law. Whereas I think by the letter of the law, it was the correct decision, if anything, because of where Jota was positioned, he wasn't interfering with play. But then at the same time, because of where the Liverpool players are positioned, Tarkowski has to go for it. So it's not strictly offside, but you can understand, frustration with how the law kind of suddenly produces a situation like that. Sometimes maybe a goal that can instinctively feel like it should be offside, but it isn't.
And I guess from Everton's point of view, I mean, David Moyes problems continue really at Anfield. It's not been a happy hunting ground for him, Henry. But they had opportunities in that game. Beto in the first half, in particular. I guess Liverpool probably took more control in the second period, but certainly in the first half, there were chances there for Everton.
Yeah, I mean, if Beto could finish in games like this, I mean, he actually got the better of Virgil van Dijk, which doesn't often happen, and he went through and he was one-on-one, and I thought he was going to put it the other side, but he sort of pulled it across the Kelleher and hit the post. He's not the most confident going through in situations like that. So maybe if Calvert-Lewin, or if they managed to get Duncan Ferguson out the studio and put him in there, he'd have had a... But that's something that, Moyes has done fantastically since he's returned. I mean, there were issues around the club, obviously off field, but there were, concerns amongst the fans about the style of football. They weren't a united club when Moyes came back, and he's got them out of any hint of trouble. They've marched up the table. They look a team. They're playing well. Tarkowski is a really good leader, and look, we all know him. We've all interviewed him. He's a sensible character, despite that filthy challenge tonight, and he's been really important for them. I thought Pickford was a little bit lucky with one of his slightly rash challenges on Nunes. Late on. Nunes actually got booked for rolling back onto the pitch for a bit of time wasting. But yeah, I mean, look, just Moyes and Everton is a love affair, and it works. And, he can leave and come back, and they just carry on again. He'll go into a new home, a new stadium with them, and just sort of carry on, because he gets Liverpool, he gets Everton. He is kind of Mr. Everton in a way.
Let's move on and talk a little bit about Manchester City, because they beat Leicester pretty comfortably in the end by 2-0. And Jack Grealish getting on the score sheet, his first Premier League goal since December the 16th, 2023. In more than a year, his first Premier League goal against Leicester City. Miguel, what do you think the future holds for Jack Grealish at City?
I mean, it still instinctively feels like he needs a move. And obviously there's kind of there's maybe a wider shift going on there. The signings they made in January, which was the first time really City had they'd spent on a raft of players in a few windows. They've kind of ushered in this maybe a new generation or a new cycle. It's expected that will continue in the summer. Although let's see what happens with the Premier League case. City, of course, insist on their innocence. But in that context, I mean, yes, you would think that maybe Grealish, just for his own sake, potentially could do it looking elsewhere. I mean, he spoke himself tonight how much about how this was a rare start in the Premier League, a rare goal in the Premier League, which itself kind of, it sets a bit of an alarm for him. But at the same time, maybe also just he himself, it wasn't just about the team needing fresh bodies and a kind of a bit of a new lease. It was also Grealish himself, maybe with kind of a younger generation around them that can amplify him as well. And maybe then his kind of seniority can actually become more of a virtue. Again, I'd still say you think he probably should move, and maybe City, as they'll seek to kind of make other signings dependent on PSO issues, maybe would try and sell him. I'm speculating there. I'm not saying it will definitely happen. But at the very least, it gives him a stronger hand and hopefully a better outlook. He is one of the game's nicest characters, Jack Grealish, as well as someone who we know has brilliant talent at the core of it.
And what about England? Because Thomas Tuchel would love a fit and firing Jack Grealish, wouldn't he, Henry?
Yes, and I think a lot of the England fans would, and I think a lot of the England media would, because we love Jack Grealish, because we often forget that players are people as well. We look at them as robots and superhumans at times. But you heard Jack Grealish talk in his post-match interview tonight and said it was the 25th anniversary of his 3-year-old brother sadly passing away, and he was choking up. And Grealish needs to be loved. He needs to be put in a team that sort of suits him tactically, maybe with a little bit of pace around him, but just get him the ball and tell him to sort of run at defenders and play with a smile on his face, as he did early on at City. And, he's got a good record at City in terms of the trophies that won. The issue, I mean, I agree with Mig, is that he may well need to move away, but is he going to go back to Aston Villa? They're not doing badly with their loan signing on the left. And also there's going to inevitably be, as there always is with footballers nowadays, the issue with wages. But the great thing is to see Jack Grealish playing again. In terms of your point about England got so much talent out wide, but Grealish does bring you that little sort of ball carrying, not with pace, but just that bit of trickery, winning free kicks, winning penalties, opening opportunities for others. He does bring you something a little bit different when he cuts in from the left.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning papers, including this one from The Sun. Top boss will have my post. We'll talk about the future of Spurs manager Ange Postecoglou. As well to sports broadcaster Henry Winter and the Independent's chief football writer Miguel Delaney. Let's go to the Telegraph. Terrific victory for Aston Villa, beating Brighton by 3-0. And what that does mean for them is that they are 7th in the Premier League, just a couple of points off Newcastle in 5th. You can see a small image there of Marcus Rashford celebrating in the goals again for Aston Villa. Miguel, what about the contrast between what Marcus Rashford is doing right now at Aston Villa and maybe what Jadon Sancho is doing at Chelsea right now?
Yeah, and that's all the more remarkable. I know Maresca's spoken about this today, but I suppose when Sancho's deal first happened and he initially had that bit of impact for Chelsea and there was some talk from within the club about they really enjoyed what he was doing, he was almost cast as an example for Rashford, something that Rashford should follow. Whereas now it feels like that's completely flipped. And obviously Sancho is suddenly left wondering about his future, as Rashford's in a situation now where I'm sure Villa would dearly like to keep him the way he's going. Manchester United might have to reconsider things, and if not, he's going to have suitors again because the transformation has been striking. And it does just point to, I think, the reality with Rashford, that as much as anything, he just needed some sort of change. I mean, whatever about recent form, whatever about the opinions of those at United, some of which might have been fair, I think this is just a case of a player who, because he was a youth graduate at a club that almost prizes that more than any other club due to the kind of the history of the Busby Babes, the special status it places those players, and him carrying that through a period when United were at their most dysfunctional for 40 years, it's going to weigh down on a player. So, I think it feels he just needs a different environment. And on the other side, to be fair, he's gone into an environment that just seems perfect with him. We know he thinks very highly of Unai Emery, who thinks very highly of him. It feels like a very good fit. And suddenly we're seeing a Marcus Rashford express himself. Whereas, you point to his erstwhile teammate at Manchester United, and potentially the future teammate at Manchester United, who just hasn't had the impact we would have expected in a similar situation.
And for Marcus Rashford, success for him is success for Aston Villa, Henry. But is the byproduct of that continuing damage for Manchester United? I know Jim Ratcliffe has said, look, if he goes there and does well, that's great for us. But is Rashford doing so well just continuing to damage Manchester United?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's a balance there. I guess the better that he does, the more money Manchester United are likely to get when they sell him, because he can't go back and play for them, because tactically and for financial reasons, Ruben Amorim clearly doesn't want him in the squad, in the team. He's made that very clear. That's been clear from way before Christmas. So, I think that Aston Villa will be, I'm sure they'd want to keep him. I mean, what a January transfer window they had with their loan signings. You look at Marlon, Asensio and Rashford all scored tonight. That's 6 wins on the spin for them. They're hitting form at the right time with major trophies to attack. So, it's interesting with Rashford. I think there's we were touching on it with Grealish. We have to remember these footballers are sort of sentient human beings as well. And Rashford, you're seeing him playing with a smile on his face. I mean, he's still, I don't think, up to anywhere near 100% fitness and sharpness yet. And when he gets that and gets some of the rust from Carrington out of his legs, then he'll be even more of a force. And you've seen it now. 2 goals, obviously, against Preston, not the strongest opposition, depleted opposition. And then again tonight in a slightly more testing fixture. So I think it's exciting, obviously, for him, for Villa. But I hope he stays at Villa, because there's something in the culture there. There's something in the Holton there. There's something in Unai Emery and John McGinn, the way he welcomes people to Bodymoor Heath and makes new players come in, and even experienced players like Rashford come in and feel loved and wanted. And then you have a tactical genius, really, like Unai Emery, who knows how to play to Rashford's strengths, which is keep him higher up the pitch and get him the ball quicker, and he'll wreak havoc.
Lots of the papers as well carrying quotes from Ange Postecoglou. Asked about his future, said there was outstanding candidates out there if Tottenham decide to move on from him. Miguel, what do you make of the way Ange Postecoglou has handled questions about his future?
It's an innovative answer. I'll give him that, to be fair. And maybe you could say he handled it well. I think actually more telling than his words were actually his mood. I mean, it feels like we're a long way away now from when Postecoglou came in at Spurs and basically charmed people. The tone has changed. The reaction from the press has changed. We deal with him every day. And this just gave the sense of a manager who at this point seems to at least feel perhaps that the end could be coming at the end of the season. Now, who knows? Maybe, as we saw with Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United last season, if he can win the Europa League, that might change the dynamic. But yeah, I mean, like anyone else, he's going to be aware of he's been directly asked about the deep speculation about his future, or sorry, about his potential replacements.
He's bound to feel a little bit under strain, isn't he, Henry? Is it starting to show?
It absolutely has been showing for a while. I think there was sympathy for him early in the season with some of the injuries that he had. What's it? 3/4 of his first choice defence plus his goalkeeper Vicaria were out at one point. But I just don't understand some of these comments that he makes. I mean, maybe he just sort of checked his contract and had a look at the compensation that he'll get if he does leave and thought, well, I can say really what I like because it's going to cost quite a lot to pay him off. But, you know, just focus on the positives about this famous club. Some of the younger players who've done marvels for him in difficult circumstances this season. Focus on one or two of the players coming back. Focus on the stadium, the support. Don't just sort of get drawn into sort of comments that Pochettino, which were actually fairly balanced. I mean, he was being respectful towards Tottenham Hotspur. Don't get caught in that, and don't say there are outstanding candidates out there, because there'll be quite a few Tottenham fans who'll say, oh, can we have a beauty parade of them quite sharpish?
And in the race for Europe, bit of a blow for Bournemouth, being beaten at home by Ipswich. Dean Huijsen played the full 90 minutes. And Miguel, you've got a story on his future.
Yeah, well, Liverpool and Chelsea both strongly looking at him for the summer, although with the caveat that Real Madrid are mulling over this. And Madrid will feel that when it comes to these situations, their sway can greatly help, especially given he's now declared for Spain. Even though he's of Dutch parentage and having been born in Amsterdam, they moved to Marbella when he was 5, and he made the switch this year he was given his full cap for Spain, his first full cap for Spain this year. But I think there's an even more interesting thing. Like, if you speak to people around Bournemouth, it does feel like, around the South Coast as well, it does feel like there's an expectation he will go. He's got the word is he's got a release clause of around 50 million. But I think there's almost something bigger here, which is, I mean, Bournemouth have obviously had a good season. It does feel now, given tonight's result, that Sunday was all the more important in that sense, because you could feel this could have been something else, and now there's been a deflation since that defeat to City. But even without doing that more, they've obviously massively overachieved. Without having a major feat, something that can really kind of hang modern history on, they could well lose, 3 players this summer and the manager, given that we know Spurs are interested in Iraola. So that'd be Huijsen, Kirkshaw's left back, and Semenyo. And there's almost a bit of sadness to that. On the other side, it could well now be the model, like Brighton, buy low, sell high. OK, Henry, thank you. Miguel, thank you. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight, 1/2 past the hour. And the show's also available as a podcast. Just download it from wherever you get your podcast.